Marque 2021 Global Impacts Report. And I want to emphasize the word impact, because that is what Marque is all about. Recognizing the significant role that agriculture plays in climate change, biodiversity, and landscape, our purpose is and always has been to facilitate and to accelerate the journey towards more sustainable farming. Day by day, season by season, more healthy food from more healthy soils in a more healthy ecosystem. Through adoption of integrated farm management, Marque gives farmers and others in the supply chain the methods by which to improve performance and the tools by which to monitor and measure and evidence this. This is great news for the farmers, whose progress and achievement is so well documented in this report, but also critically for all of our brands, manufacturers and retailers, and thereby all consumers. Marque certification acknowledges this through its robust, independent and internationally recognized audit process and scrutiny. Impact is described by an observation of change, and the statistics highlighted in this report are but just a few of the many metrics that the Leaf Sustainable Farming Review enables. 42% of Marque farmers are now measuring soil organic content routinely. 39% of Marque farmers are using a carbon footprinting tool. 42% organic content, 67% of farmers are using some form of renewable energy on their farms. 45% of all UK fruit and vegetables are now produced on Marque certified farms. Now, these numbers and many others are impressive in themselves, but actually it is the trend, the increasing trends that are most important. Year on year, increased impact. Marque farmers and other supply chain partners are helping to lead widespread change. And the most powerful agent for change on farms, I believe, is what one might describe as over-the-hedge observation. What are my neighbors doing? What are my competitors doing? What evidence is there to support this change which is being discussed in the farming press and across other industry and media platforms? As farmers embrace the challenges and the opportunities presented by 21st century politics, technologies and markets, Marque is proud to be able to point to a long and growing list of impacts, environmental, financial and social, all of which we recognize and celebrate today. Perhaps above all, in the context of such widespread and welcome concern for and interest in the environment, Marque recognizes our need to be ambitious and dynamic as we seek to respond to and provide leadership in the area of sustainable farming. In that regard, I want to thank so many of our partners and collaborators whose expertise and knowledge is so generously shared to make this organization as impactful as it is. Our technical advisory committee under the chairmanship of Ian Finlayson, and the wonderful array of best practice and talent that exists throughout our network of demonstration farms and innovation centers, as well as to all of you who participate in Open Farm Sunday and Leaf Education and the various supporters of those initiatives. It is the whole extended family of Leaf participants throughout Europe and across the globe which enables the achievements that the Global Impacts Report describes. And it is all of you who give us the confidence and determination to keep raising the bar and challenging for deeper and broader impact. Thank you all. In due course, you'll have the opportunity to look at the wonderful report which is published today. Now, I'm delighted to be joined by three inspirational Marque business leaders. First up will be Marion Regan of Hugh Farms, followed by Duncan Farrington of Farrington Oils, and thirdly, Angus Davison from Haygrove. Each have their own stories to tell and perspective on the way that Marque helps to shape their operations, their production, and their impact on the environment and community. Firstly, to Marion. Marion, your business, Lowe Farms, was, I believe, the very first to be in receipt of Leaf Marque certification 18 years ago. Now, whilst many, of course, know you and know of your business, some will not. So please would you start off by briefly describing what you do at Lowe Farms, and more importantly, of course, how you do it and the role that Leaf Marque plays in this.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Tom. Yes, and good to see everybody. Lots of names I recognise, and good to see you all. Good morning. So Lowe Farms, we are a soft fruit grower. We grow strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries. We're based in Kent, and we grow on several farms under glass and under tunnels. But we also have quite a large acreage of arable land and other land as well, which of which more later. It certainly helps to integrate with our soft fruit production, and we're increasingly looking at managing our arable land to mitigate and offset the effects of fruit production, whether it's landscape scale or carbon. So we're a whole farm business, and we use Leaf and Leaf Marque across all of our products. So that includes all our combinable crops as well. And we sell to the major multiple retailers through Berry Gardens, the grower-owned cooperative. Yes, we were at the very sort of beginning of Leaf. And it's interesting being asked to comment as the first audited business, and obviously a bit later we can talk about how the effect of remote auditing has been, but certainly we've had a lot of audits over the years, and looking back to how it first started, it's quite interesting because, of course, Leaf Marque evolved out of what we called back then the Leaf Audit, which was a self-audit, and is now the Sustainable Farming Review. So it was a slightly softly approach. We were all used to doing the self-audit, and then the Leaf Marque was introduced as a certification and verification standard against using much the same format as the Leaf Audit. And it's fair to say that back then there was quite some trepidation, I think, amongst growers when the Leaf Marque audit was rolled out. It was one of the first proper assurance schemes. I think we were doing Tesco's Nature's Choice also at the time. But the Leaf Marque always set out to be one step ahead of other farm assurance schemes. So yes, there was some trepidation, and I took the view back then, and I still do, which is that the best way of tackling this is to totally embrace it and to embed the format of the Leaf Marque audit in our management practices. Otherwise, it becomes an annual box ticking exercise where you're scrabbling around to find your bits of evidence and so on. Whereas if you embed it in the way you actually manage your business, the audit is much more self-evident and proceeds normally, but also you get the value out of the way that Leaf Marque and the Leaf Audit back then was structured. And so that's why it worked. It's because it evolved out of the self-audit. It was sensibly formatted. It made sense from the point of view of management plans. And I think over the years, it's managed to stay very much ahead of other assurance schemes. And I think that there's three reasons for this. The first is there is ambition amongst Leaf Marque growers to stretch themselves. There's we want to, for various reasons, we want to add value to our products, but we also, as farmers, we live and work on our production units, unless, in most cases. So we actually want to link environment and farming in a very real way. Secondly, the reason that LeafMarque works as a management tool is it has an eye towards economic sustainability. So it genuinely is guided and listens to farming businesses. And so it's a practical tool. And thirdly, it's got this unique connection with consumers, partly through Open Farm Sunday and community outreach. But I think LeafMarque sort of knows what's going on in public opinion and reacts to that ahead maybe of others. So it's always, every year, there's a bit more stretch to it. But I think that we use it very much as part of our management tools. So we have our water management plan, our waste management plan, and these are genuine living plans. They're not just pulled out of a dusty drawer once a year. And over the years, different issues have sort of ebbed and flowed. So I would single out biodiversity was perhaps where we all started. Certainly crop protection is as an underlying plank and integrated farm management. Biodiversity has perhaps flowed and ebbed, but I think is now flowing back into the forefront of people's minds. It's changed over the years, the way we monitor biodiversity performance on farms, and it's perhaps more now on a landscape level as well. And then the other thing I would single out is water. Over the years, we've all had to focus very heavily on water management, and Leaf has been very helpful in that. And the LeafMarque, quite rightly, focuses a lot on water sustainability and water quality. But of course, now the new big challenge is climate change and how we are going to achieve net zero. And so I anticipate a lot more action from LeafMarque and management tools within Leaf to help us achieve real change there. Over the years, we've actually at Hugh Lowe Farms tried to fly the flag for our British berries as certified as LeafMarque, and I think that's had real traction with our customers. And I was quite instrumental when I was chairman of Berry Gardens of getting the whole group, all Berry Gardens members are audited as under LeafMarque. And I think they've seen the benefit, and I think that our retail customers feel very comforted that there is a whole group of British growers who have taken this route. Even if some of their retailer customers haven't necessarily specified it, they see the benefits of it as a management tool. So I think that's been quite a unique aspect of our particular grower group. And I suppose looking at how the audit actually works now, we had our remote audit this year. And I think our overall view was it very positive. I mean, everything's remote now. But at the time, it was quite early on in lockdown, so it was last May. I think we found the data room very easy to use and linked with the Sustainable Farming Review. It probably got us even more engaged with the self-audit, the Sustainable Farming Review. So in a way, I think that was a positive. And actually, the sort of virtual walk around, we weren't sure how that would work. But in fact, you know, as you're walking around with a phone and you're looking at your chemical store and you're looking at, you know, what you're doing with your hedge management or whatever, you can't, it's almost as real as having the person with you. I would stop short from saying, please can all audits be remote in future. I think you do need to have boots on the ground, but it certainly worked fine.
Let me jump in, Marion. I mean, I think it's wonderful to hear such a case study emerging from your business, which we know and love so well. and you speak of the confidence that is gained within your business from participating with Leaf Marque, as well as consumers and your customers outside. But I think I observe that amongst all the horrors of COVID, one of the things that is happening that has been accelerated by this awful crisis is the adoption of all sorts of digital communications. And if we can get to a position where the gathering of data and the evidence base is largely remote, and that the auditing is more about an exchange of expertise and a discussion around what you're doing and how you can improve processes, so much the better. Is that what you've seen?
That's exactly what I think, how we benefited. I mean, even with the best will in the world, I think when audits were completely physical, then we didn't upload everything. You know, it would be lovely to say that we had, but we didn't. We would still be scrabbling around for bits of paper and things. Whereas now, we've sorted it out digitally.
Yeah.
So that's how we will proceed going forward. So, you know, every cloud has a silver lining, and this probably has been the kick up the backside to move us and a lot of records more online. And you're right, that's how an audit should work.
I think we talk about a global our impact as an organisation, and impact has to be evidenced. And I think the digital revolution that we're all sort of benefiting from in different ways enables evidence to be shared so much more transparently, whether it be traceability, provenance, how you operate your business, etc. And of course, there's the old adage that says that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And I like to think, and my experience certainly of Leaf Marque has been that it's given us tools as farmers to measure, monitor performance, and then provide evidence over years. And I like the idea that we should really be focusing the lens very strongly now on priorities around climate, around carbon capture, etc. That we can celebrate as Leaf Marque farmers, and then be used as beacons, as it were, for others to observe. Because as I alluded to in my opening remarks, I think farmers are most persuaded by evidence of others having succeeded with a new approach. Does that ring true for you?
Yes, it does. And I'd add another thing, which is that I have a bit of an issue with proxy data being used too glibly. And I think that there's going to be such a drive towards providing evidence that we need to fight for data-led solutions when looking at climate change, because otherwise I think it's going to be too much top-down imposition of, oh, well, you're farming in the southeast of England, your soil type must be X, therefore you must be emitting Y. You know, and I'm sort of like, whoa, no, I'm with you, Tom. I think we need real farm data-led solutions to a lot of the problems that we're talking about. So we can really work with the actual problems. It's not easy, because how do you actually measure? Some things are hard and expensive to measure. Biodiversity is hard to measure in terms of outcomes. But I think that there's a lot of very sort of good brains working on this around the world. I've used lockdown to spend quite a lot of time on various forums and things. Gosh, there's a lot going on. It's mad.
It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. Marion, thank you for that wonderful contribution. And happily, everybody will be able to read the case study that is briefly referred to in the Global Impacts Report that talks about your experiences and your wonderful business. I'm now delighted for us to have the opportunity to move on to Duncan, who will also have a perspective on many of the points that we've picked up on. Welcome, Duncan.
Tom, thank you very much for the introduction, and likewise, welcome to everyone else. And I can see some lots of faces we know there, and look forward to meeting up in the future in person. So Sam's going to guide me through and get a presentation I've got for this, and I'm going to canter through it because I know
Duncan,
Tom
who will also have a perspective on many of the points that we've picked up on. Welcome, Duncan.
Tom, thank you very much for the introduction, and likewise, welcome to everyone else. And I can see some lots of faces we know there, and look forward to meeting up in the future in person. So Sam's going to guide me through and get a presentation I've got for this, and I'm going to canter through it because I know
Duncan,
Tom,
who will also have a perspective on many of the points that we've picked up on.
Sam,
Welcome,
what's happening? Tom, thank you very much for the introduction, and likewise.
Apologies, I'll be just a couple of technical issues as always. Just bear with me.
No worries.
Yeah, don't worry, Tom. So when Sam gets that up, I'm going to canter through a presentation quite quickly because I know Tom wants some time at the end for questions and a bit of a grilling. So while Sam gets that up, so for those that don't know me, I'm Duncan Farrington, founder of Farrington Oils, and we were the first company in Britain to grow, press and bottle rapeseed oil. And obviously it's very healthy, delicious, and we sell it through retailers. And in normal times, we would sell it through pubs and restaurants around the UK. And I'm a leaf marque farmer, and all of the rapeseed we use is from leaf marque sources, both from our own farm and increasingly off other farms as well. And well done, Sam, you've got it up there. So let's jump to the third slide, and next one as well. Well done, thank you. So environment and sustainability has been at the heart of everything I do here in Northamptonshire ever since I came back to the farm. And I was delighted that in 2020, we became the world's first food brand to be certified as both plastic and carbon neutral, which was a great accolade. And I'm pleased to say we've had this year's certification done as well. And on the next slide, it shows you is a lot of text there. I'm not going to go through all of it, but the journey we've been on and how did we achieve this neutrality? With plastic, we've measured it, we've reduced it, and we're looking for alternative sources through an organisation called Repurpose Global. But on the carbon, which is the main one I'll go on today, we are certified by the United Nations as carbon neutral. And how have we done this? Well, I've been a leaf farmer practicing integrated farm management for many years. And through doing that, for example, we've reduced our fuel use by 60 to 75% by moving away from ploughing. We've reduced our fertilizer use so far by about 13% by adopting a broader crop rotation, including spring cropping, and there's a lot more we need to do on that area. In 2018, as Tom mentioned, lots of leaf growers are using renewable energy. Well, we added into that, and now 50% of our electricity needs comes from solar panels. And then with the leaf marque, and Marion touched on this about, making sure it's not just a box ticking exercise. So I've been a leaf marque grower for several years, and part of that in the audit and the data we collect is a lot of energy information there. And I wanted to sort of look at all this data that Leaf has helped us collect and see if we could take it further. And if we go on to the next slide, because I can't quite remember what it is. That's right, thank you, Sam. So we eventually became, through using the Leaf data we had collected over the years, we got certified last year as carbon neutral, and we actually had to offset 340 tons of carbon from our total business, which was a good result. And we've offset that through a reforestation program in Uruguay and investing in green energies. But there's a big part of this that's missing. And currently the United Nations and no certification body yet recognizes the potential of the soils, and agriculture's in the unique position of having this great potential in the very fields that we farm. And to put it into perspective, if soil has the ability to absorb between 10 to 30% of all global carbon emissions, and that would offset the equivalent of all global transport. So it's absolutely huge. Well, some more research suggests that if agricultural land around the world increased its carbon from 1 to say 3% carbon content, that would take the equivalent of 1 trillion tons of carbon out of the atmosphere. And that puts it back to pre-industrial levels. So on the next slide, it shows, this is a field of ours, and this is where I get really excited as it comes together. So this field is called Below the Black Barn Field, because on the hill is a barn and it's black. That's a crop of our rapeseed for this year, which will go into bottles next year. But I started trying some things on there. We stopped ploughing in 1998 and started on a journey of minimum tillage, zero tillage, cover crops, broader crop rotation. All of them are the standard IFM type principles, or nowadays people might call it regenerative agriculture. And on this graph here, that shows on that particular field, I started doing soil analysis on it in 2002 to measure the carbon content. And throughout the years, we've increased the soil carbon content on that field by 76%. And that's shown on the green line, but on the blue line at the same time, and I think this is very important, we don't want to lose sight, we've also increased the total nutritional content of the soil. And if our soil's more healthy, it's going to mean less inputs are needed from me, and we're going to grow more healthy, nutritious food, which as an industry and a society, I think that is what we need to be doing. So what does this mean in context? Well, on that field alone, we've got one more slide showing our mellow yellow mini, and the field has absorbed through the power of the sun over the years enough carbon dioxide on that one field alone to offset the emission of the equivalent to 200 of those mellow yellow minis off UK roads every year. And that's just one field. Now, if you put our medium-sized family farm in there with all the fields, the trees, the hedges and the wildlife around it, we are offsetting the equivalent to nearly 2,800 medium-sized family cars off UK roads every year. So I want to get to a position where we get accredited for that. And that's the exciting bit. And on the next slide, please, Sam. Since we've had our neutrality, I've now been invited, and I'm working with a European project over the next 3 years, and Leaf are part of this as well, and it's called the Agricapture Co2 Project. It's in its infancy at the moment, but the long-term aim is to get an internationally accepted, verified model of looking at soil carbon sequestration using satellite data and tying it down with soil testing on the ground, but at an international level, so that we can, in the future, agree that our soils are part of the solution. And on the next slide, I think this ties in nicely, because this is my thoughts on where sustainable agriculture is going to go. And I think we're going to get income as farmers from potentially 4 different areas. The first one is the produce we grow. The second one will be public money from public goods, so under the ELM scheme and the countryside stewardship type schemes. And the third one will be the new one. This will be the income from potential carbon trading. And it's very important that it is a trusted, verifiable, certifiable method of doing this, so that both farmers and those that potentially are going to buy the carbon credits have trust in the whole system. And then there's a fourth one on there, and this way maybe sort of open farm Sunday type things, or other farms do it in different ways. Ecotourism. We did a tree planting exercise last year on the farm just before lockdown, and people were keen to turn up and come and plant a tree on our farm. And I think it's something that farmers, we can make a lot more of this. And I think we've got 1 or 2 more slides left, Sam. So why are we doing this? Well, personally, I'm doing because I have a genuine passion and an intrigue, and continue to make mistakes, but hopefully learning a lot and improving along the way. I'm absolutely convinced it's going to be a future income stream. And I think it's good to start it now. And that's where Leaf farmers, we are ahead of the curve. As Tom said, in those global impact statistics, you know, so many farmers are already doing this. And that's really good, because we're going to be made to do it soon. So I'd rather be at the front leading it rather than being told what to do and brought along, dragging my feet later on. And lastly, and this is a very important bit, it's something we must do. It's our moral duty to do it, so that we can hand our farms and our planet and talk to our consumers, so that we're making an improvement and hand it on to the next generation. So thank you very much. Hopefully I've whizzed through that, Tom, and yeah, happy for you to do your grilling. Grill away.
You've beautifully and brilliantly answered all the questions I was going to ask you, but I guess and happily your business is featured in the Global Impacts Report as a case study. Folk can have a good look at it. But I think you're a shining example of leadership and best practice in so many of these areas that you've touched upon. And part of the challenge is, how do we roll this out to others? How do others learn from your experiences? And most importantly, as we measure performance, and particularly we audit that performance, and perhaps attach to those measurements tradable, auditable scores, whether it be a tradable offset or a government subsidy or some form of incentive or reward. How do we ensure that these things are rolled out in a fashion that avoid being discredited and undermined by confusion in the marketplace? Do you want to just comment on that briefly?
Yeah, certainly. So the first thing I'd say is do the Leaf Marque audit. Is a very good starting point, because it means you are collecting data. So what I wanted to do was take that data and then move it to the next step. And it's a question I'm asked a lot, and I absolutely get it. There's lots of models out there in farming models looking at their carbon footprints and the soil sequestration, which is, again, do them, have a play around and see where you fit. I mean, but because we had a brand that we are selling to consumers, and more our actual customers, the retailers, they are genuinely wanting sustainable products. So we looked at seeing if we could find a certified organization to do it. And I thought, well, whether the figures are right or not, the United Nations is a good place to start. So that's where we started. And even their modeling, since I've been doing it, we've made some suggestions and changed. I'm not the mathematician or the scientist, but they have changed it around. But a lot of farmers are worried about doing something now, but I would say start on the journey now. But if you are looking at trading carbon, which has already started around the world, certainly do it if that's what you want to do, but certainly don't go and tie up for a long period. Think of a phone contract or your utility bills. Don't go and tie up for something for 5 or 10 years, because at the moment, no one really knows what the actual value of carbon is. Is it £5 a tonne or is it £95 a tonne? I'd imagine it's going to be somewhere in the middle and a bit higher than the 5. But don't go and sign up now thinking, yeah, I'm going to get 10 or 20 or £100,000 tomorrow for my carbon, and then find out that one, you can't produce it because it hasn't been measured properly, or two, you've been underpaid, or three, you've been overcharging, because the customer buying that carbon won't be happy if they feel they've been ripped off either. But start the journey and work with Leaf and look out for the Agricapture CO2, because I'm convinced that with Leaf involved with their credibility and the project we're working on, it's very exciting. So it's all going to come together very quickly.
Duncan, thank you so much. We really appreciate all that you do, and very comforted to know that you're helping to shape the United Nations measurement of carbon. We know we're in safe hands now. I'm delighted now to welcome Angus Davison, who many of you will know, of Haygrove. And Angus sits on the Leaf Marque board with me and others, and we enormously appreciate the perspective he brings to that body, not least wearing his international hat. And Angus, perhaps we could just dive straight into the importance that you attach to Leaf Marque, both in your UK business, but perhaps in particular, looking at what you do overseas.
Yeah, thank you, Tom, and inspiring Marion and Duncan. Yeah, we're different to a long friend Marion, the same passions for the ethics and the how, but I think we've been slightly more Galapagos in our approach. And it was only perhaps 20 years ago that the organisation we market our same soft fruit through Berry Gardens introduced us to Leaf, and what we discovered was a a railway, really. It's rather like a Victorian built railway 100 years ago, good for 200. It's been really well thought through, and it takes you through the landscape, and you can go a lot faster than riding a horse next door. So I look at it as there, just get on the train, don't go by horse along the side. And the board's job is obviously to build new tracks, but for Haygrove, we follow the railway in the UK, and we have introduced the same to our operations in other countries, which is now the majority, though we're domiciled and our sort of home and heart is here. And so it's been wonderful to provide that track, and in some different cultures, we're now producing a bit in China. Of course, it's quite a mind twister to their environment, and yet, is it? It's logical. It works. Does it take a long conversation with a young Chinese agricultural graduate? No, it doesn't. Does it take a long conversation with an African graduate? No, it doesn't. What is going to take it to those places? Not us with our few small farms, but on a wider perspective. I think it's those very same brands and retailers that have helped it along the way here, that have sort of enabled the railway builder to keep pushing. And so I hope, Tom, that is what happens, and I think it's very possible. I think it must happen.
Do you see the beginnings of relationships? We've cherished and nurtured and benefited from some very strong relationships in the UK with supply chain partners in retail and manufacturing of foods. Do you see those emerging or opportunities for them to emerge similarly in international markets for Leaf Marque?
Well, those needs for a sort of robust, reliable assurance of food from wherever it comes are equal, aren't they? They're all over the world. They're not unique to Britain. And so I think the answer has to be yes. It's more in how do you do it. But those that are listening today that I hope are convertees totally, you can help so much because you have colleagues and opposite numbers and potential partners for the future of Leaf abroad. And if one thinks of retailers alone, and again, let me go to some extreme place like China. There's a group there called Lowe. It's rather like, it's got 65 outlets, so it's not huge for a place like that, but they're all Fortnum and Mason types. They do a lot of importing. They sell at about 30% over the market. Would they be interested in an association with Leaf? Well, who knows? Let's ask. Spinneys in the Middle East, Wegmans in the States. This is what I mentioned to Caroline the other evening. It's what Ocado are doing around the world, really picking the leader and partnering with them. So I think it's very exciting, Tom. I think we can do it. I think Leaf needs to punch 10 times beyond now, and through that, agriculture and horticulture's UK agriculture and horticulture's contribution to the how can be quietly extended in a very positive way. I think Leaf is our arrowhead.
Yeah, well, around the boardroom and across the network, we are unashamedly keen to be very ambitious as we embrace the pace of change and support those organisations that are trying to play their roles. Not least of which, of course, is our government in the United Kingdom as they bring in the new British agriculture policy. And we very much enjoy being part of that conversation and hope that we can play a significant role. But I see, interestingly, Leaf Marque facing two different ways. Firstly, helping farmers farm more sustainably, and secondly, giving assurance to brands, retailers, and consumers. And of course, they're very closely linked. But do you see that internationally, those two playing equally important roles, or is there a particular emphasis that you place on either one of those aspects?
I suppose I'm seeing Leaf as the railway, but then you need a train to do the pulling. Who's doing the pulling? And that's, Marion didn't need any pulling. She drove herself. The same for Duncan. But there's a lot of us out there who need that brand or that retailer, that customer to say, here's the track, don't go on your horse. And they're not necessarily setting the pace, although pulling does that. I think, therefore, it is incumbent upon the brands and retailers to grip it. They have a responsibility, and to just illustrate, to point the way. This is the way to do it.
Yeah, I think I take the opportunity to introduce the concept of the scalability of what we do. I referred to the fact that 45% of UK fruit and veg is now sourced from Leaf Marque certified farms. I think one of the excitements of the digital revolution that we're now embracing is that Leaf Marque is capable of being scaled up globally. Everything we're doing, from the remote auditing to the sharing of data to the collection of data, is capable of being shared across the entire globe. And that's relevant both, as I've said, to help farmers internationally, but also to give assurance to consumers, whether they be domestically in each country around the world or at the border of the United Kingdom, giving consumers in this country confidence that food that we're importing has been sourced and grown to similar standards to that which we would encourage and expect here. Can I encourage Caroline and Jenny and others to join the conversation? And we've got in the minutes that we've got left, by all means, let's indulge in a bit of a discussion, and questions are welcome to any of those of us who have contributed so far. Questions or observations, indeed. Do we have any, Sam, to get into?
Yes, we certainly do. Yeah. So there's a question here, and this is for everyone, although I think Duncan did allude to this earlier. For your businesses, what is the main driver for reducing carbon? Is it doing the right thing, meeting targets, a buyer requirement, or farm efficiency?
Duncan, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll try. Well, in my case, I was intrigued because, as I said, I'd got these years of soil analysis. I got the years of Leaf Marque energy monitoring, and I just wanted to try and do it. So it was my own passion and wanting to do the right thing. I wasn't being pushed by a retailer because no one has had yet done it. But I just wanted to see where we were on the scale, and it turned out it is achievable. It's an achievable objective.
I think Duncan, it's fascinating because as a consumer of your products, it really does stand out. You know, it is. So the reason that you did it might well have been because you were intrigued and it was a personal journey, but it's also definitely resonates at the consumer level. So that's terrific. I think for us, I think we've also got to recognise that this is hard to do for a lot of sectors. This is hard to do, and it's going to take several years, and we've got to start because it's actually quite a short time. The actual trajectory, whether you say 20, 30, 40 or 50, you know, start now. And we're going to have to do this, not just as a price of entry into our supply chains, which, you know, there was an announcement yesterday from Tesco, there was an announcement last week from Morrison's, there are science-based targets across the whole supply chain. So we're going to have to do it, but also it is, you know, it also engages the whole workforce. I find we had a recent meeting with our whole team, and at the end of it, somebody said, well, you know, at least we can now go home and talk to our children. They're going to ask us, what are you doing about climate change? And we say, oh, well, at work, we're doing this. You know, this engages everybody.
Beautiful. Sam, another question?
Yes, this one is aimed at Duncan. Someone's just asked a bit more about the Agricapture project, and they just wanted to know a bit more about who the science partners are in the project.
Right. So there's, thank you for that. There's lots of, you can go on the internet, and there's lots of websites springing up and offering carbon trading. And a lot of these websites, they are at the moment just a single page, holding page. It will come. So it's a consortium of 17 different companies around Europe. So Leaf, Farrington Oils, and also the Game and Wildlife Trust are the agricultural partners in the UK. There's a German satellite company, so that's where the satellites are doing, and they can look at pixelation down to I think 3 meters square instead of 30 meters square, which is a normal size. There's Athens University. There's some I've got some olive oil growers in Crete. So there's some Polish farmers. There's a lot of organisations in there. But in amongst all those, there are the researchers from Holland to Belgium to Bosnia. So yes, there's a lot of clever scientists. I just turn up as a farmer and yeah, put my 2 pennies worth in.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
This again is for everyone. How do we as an industry deal with the demands of a booming population alongside mitigating the effects of the current climate crisis? And what role does Leaf Marque have to play in that?
Caroline, do you want to have a go at that one?
Well, I mean, I guess the real thing is the need for sustainable food. And, you know, Duncan alluded about the importance of sustainable, nutritious, healthy foods. So that's, you know, one area. And we've got, you know, 3 farmers around the table here who are producing the sorts of foods that we only need to see more of, which is really critical. But of course, you know, if we can make a less of an impact and grow the 45% of the UK fruit and veg sector to, you know, pushing the limits right up to sort of 70, 80, 90%, that expands that activity into other areas. The livestock area, of course, we've got the whole of Jersey is Leaf Marque certified. But actually, you know, this is about doing more of what we're doing in a very, you know, expanding it, working in partnerships, understanding new ways of doing things. But in addition to that, actually, you know, scaling up that activity fast. You know, we really need to accelerate this. And I think Angus has probably got some thoughts in this area as well, Tom.
Go for it, Angus.
Gosh, feed the world. Wow. I'll use another Chinese example because I'm fresh with them at the moment. The pig industry there, which, Carol, I'm not sure how big we are in pigs, but we should be everywhere. And there they have a very large pig population of smallholders. And the government has decided it needs to industrialise in order to feed in a more biosecure manner. And they wish 65% of the industry to be industrial pig production within a very short time frame, as they do things very quickly, you know, be it 10 or 15 years from now. And so that may be much better from a biosecure point of view. They don't lose all the pigs to swine fever. Of course, Germany had their shout on that too. It's not just places like China. So biosecure better, but from all the other measures around the leaf circle need good thought too. And it can be given both to, you know, to an industrial agriculture that feeds the 50, 60, 70% that are going to be in cities. It needs to be given. So what comes to my mind is the application of leaf principles to large scale agriculture, not just small.
I would just add to that, if I may, that I perceive that the last 2, 3, 4 decades of farming has been characterized by huge progress that one might characterize as being driven by mechanization and chemistry, and that the digital revolution, to which I've referred several times this morning, is now enabling us to have a future that is much more about biology and automation. And suddenly, we've talked about precision farming for years. Precision farming is becoming a reality. We're able to direct our inputs in a fashion that is quite different to how it was before. And thus, I think the reality is that lower input farming will be more productive. And I suspect that we can produce more from less in a fashion going forwards that is quite different to how it's been in the past. And Leaf Marque needs to position itself absolutely as the proponent and the exemplar of that as we go forward. Sam, next question.
Yes, this is another one aimed specifically for Duncan. It's very popular today. Although I think this one could probably be answered by everyone. Duncan alluded to the fact that leaf is regenerative farming, but how does the industry not fragment around these, you know, soundbite descriptors?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've I don't like all these tags, and I've never been, and I've integrated farm management. I absolutely get it amongst farmers and leaf. I know what it means, but talking to non-farming people, the term is a bit of a mouthful. We have got to be careful that all of these terms on who uses what and where, but it's good. It just comes down to good common sense, sustainable agriculture, and I don't care what it's called. Tom just alluded, you know, precision farming, and I am absolutely convinced we can grow crops with a lot less inputs. Yesterday we just planted some clover as an underlay in some spring barley, and over the next 4 years we're going to keep it there and hopefully rapidly reduce the fertilizer use on that field. Whether that's regenerative, whether that's integrated farm management, whether it's conservation ag or whatever, I don't really care. So yeah, good question, but let's all do it together and let's not get political and split up. And I think that's what Leaf's been very good at doing, is bringing everyone together, and we can all learn from each other.
Good answer. Anybody want to add to that? Sam, another question?
Yeah, we've got one more here. And this one will probably be aimed towards Caroline. What conversations, if any, are Leaf having with international retailers?
So we haven't started those, but as Angus alluded to, you know, this is the time for us to really get that journey. We have in the past had conversations with some of the Dutch retailers and indeed some of the French retailers as well. I think the great opportunity is really trying, we've over the last sort of 2-3 years been working more closely with China and India and understanding whether there's some inroads there. So yet to start that journey, but certainly welcome anybody's ideas and certainly support in really giving us those introductions to work out how, you know, what that could look like and how we put it into action.
If I can add,
Jenny, yeah.
Benchmarking against various international schemes, whether it's the HBE scheme in France, to start that, I guess, translation element and make sure that, you know, when we can start to work with the supply chain, we're also aligned with international policies as well.
I mean, this is going to be really critical in terms of the farm to fork piece across Europe, because by 2024, there will be sustainability labelling across Europe. And for us to be one of the providers, as it's called, with Leaf Marque into that marketplace would be absolutely fantastic.
Caroline, thank you. I'm conscious of time. I want to point to you that in the chat, the document, our Global Impacts Report has been published. Please access it from there and elsewhere on our website. My final duty and pleasure is to thank warmly all those who've sponsored, supported this event, the report itself and the video. You know, I hope, how much that support is appreciated. And to all of you for your enthusiasm and your support and for the sharing of knowledge and excitement around this space. Thank you. And we look forward to being able to meet face to face as soon as possible. Stay safe, and Sam is going to play the video again for anybody who is late or who'd just like to watch it again. Now's your opportunity. Farewell.
Sam, we're not seeing that.
Apologies. Bear with me.
Not the end of the world, because most of us.
No, I think everybody's had a great insight.
And so perhaps now is the time to say again, thank you to everybody. Do stay on if you wish, and Sam may be successful. Otherwise.
Yeah, I will be successful in a second, I promise.
It's the video that was shot at the beginning of the session, so.
Hang on. Can you all see that? Apologies. Bear with me.
Off we go again. not the end of the world, because most of it.
No, I think everybody's had a great insight.
And so perhaps now is the time to say again, thank you to everybody. Do stay on.
We're still live on YouTube.